but we need just something to call you. And then the other thing that we always tell you is that, look, we're going to give you the best answer we can based on the information that we have, but unfortunately, we don't have your documents, so we cannot give you a legal answer that's good in court without seeing those documents, because that could change the answer. So if you do have a situation where you're thinking about an issue that you may want to pursue legally, and where you're at with it, then you should contact somebody like Peter, who's a specialist in the area of condos and HOAs, and he can then look at your documents and he can help you out and give you some guidance and kind of tell you what you could or can't do, and what your chances are and those kind of things. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, we're gonna give you answers based on the rules and regulations as their standard common law and practices and things like that. But also, because some people are too shy to call, we sometimes talk a little broader about your question than maybe your specific problem. And that's so that in case there's somebody with similar but not exactly the same situation, that we can cover that as well too. So anyway, that's that's kind of the gist of the show. So good morning, Peter. How are you doing?
Morning, Mark. I'm well. Happy New Year.
Yep,
How are you?
same to you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I did. This was a COVID Christmas for me. Thank goodness. I had did it one time, and it was so much fun. No, I didn't. I don't want to do it again. But anyway, I did do the COVID for Christmas.
I'm
So
sorry.
I missed out. Well, it was I had my Wednesday show that I talked a little bit about it. It's kind of an unusual situation. People don't really realize, but it wasn't bad. I had one bad day, which for me was a good thing. Just after that, it was pretty smooth sailing. In fact, I didn't have any real symptoms after that. So I got lucky. But I think from what I've heard from other people, it's the one comment I would have is, you know, don't be afraid. Have a plan. Don't be afraid. Be ready. This one is not the one that hit you a year ago, and we've got a lot of better ways to treat it. But anyway, yeah, it was kind of a boring thing though, because I missed out on my grandkids. But other than that, I'm good to go. I've been good to go now for probably 5 days, so I'm ready. But yeah, it was missed the show here. We took some days off, but for the holiday. So did you get everything? Your kids back in town and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, my sons were here for Christmas, so that was nice. My two grandchildren. So that's the first time we've all been together like that for a long, long time.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
so that was good. No one got sick as far as I know, so that's better.
Yeah.
And so here we are, back at it. Right?
Good deal. Well, we got a couple callers. We'll start out with the first one. John, go ahead, John. How are you? Merry
Hey,
Christmas,
good
Happy
morning.
New Year.
Good morning, gentlemen. You probably have an anniversary show coming up after 17 or 18 years. I guess you don't even know when you first started, or was it in January?
Evan told us it was. I don't think it was in January, but I think we're coming up on 20. I think it's 20 years. Greg Wyatt reminded me, and then I forgot again. But I think we're a little over 20 years at this point. Yeah,
It was that other. I mean, it was that other studio. Remember? I mean,
the one in Port St. Lucie. Yeah.
Yeah, in the very beginning.
Yep. That was, and I think that was.
I don't know, like an old married couple. I can't remember anything.
I know. Can't remember my anniversary. Can't remember. I can't. It's over. Over. I think it is over 20 years, because I remember it was before. It was before the. I think it was
before dinosaurs.
Well, no, it was before Francis and Jean. Do you do that, Peter? Sometimes you arrange. Let's see. Was that before or after Francis and Jean? Because we got hit by both of those, and I remember the studio in Port St. Lucie got torn up, and that's what actually resulted in the move down here into Stewart.
The roof had a problem or something.
Yeah. So that would have been 2004.
That was 04.
Yeah.
That was 04 and 05.
So we were doing it before that. So it's right at 20 years, I think, somewhere in that, pretty close.
But anyway.
Yeah. That's definitely when I started listening to you. I moved in here, and the first thing I got 3 months later was the hurricanes. But my question to you is, proxies. At an annual meeting, if I am a proxy holder of 100, let's say, and I'm in person, do I need to fill out proxies if I'm attending the meeting?
Let me see if I understand that correctly. You're attending the meeting, you're the proxy holder for, like, say, 100 proxies that
Yes.
people have given you?
Yes.
Is that
No,
correct?
no, hold on. Let me back up. I'm an owner of 100 lots. Therefore,
Yeah.
I get 100 proxies.
Well, you don't get 100 proxies, you get 100 votes. You don't need any proxies. I mean, a proxy is if, you don't show up and you have to give someone else your right to vote.
Thank you. That's my point. The gentleman showed up, filled out 100 proxies instead of signing the member roster sheet 100 times, which is, I think, a requirement. I mean, if you have your lots listed and there's 100 lots and your signature should go beside each one if you're attending the meeting. Am I mistaken on that, or is that correct?
That's how I used. Yeah, I mean, I don't do the check-ins, but when I used to do the check-ins more frequently in my younger days, I would have someone who owned multiple lots or multiple units sign in or initial next to his or her units. Sometimes it took a long time, but so what? Yes, they would sign in for all those units, all those lots, depending on the vote. Okay, if there was a vote going on, he or she would get 100 ballots. Some places they would give them one ballot and they would write 100 on it, which sometimes I would do that, although that kind of eliminates the secrecy, though, because you know who has 100, right? You can figure it out whose vote that is. So I've seen it done both ways, but the proxies, again, the whole point of a proxy, like I said before, is if I own 100, but I'm not going to be there because I'm out of town or I've been hanging out with Mark and I have COVID or something, then I would, give my proxy to someone else, and that person would now have the right to cast 100 of my votes because he's my or she is my proxy holder for my 100 lots or my 100 units.
Sure,
but I don't need proxies. I don't need proxies for myself if I'm there.
Yes. Now, if you're there and you're in the room, and let's say that there are 99 people in attendance, and you're the 100th person, and you have 100 lots. And at the annual meeting, if it was established, first of all, if it was established that there was a quorum to have a meeting, let's assume there was, then that one person, would they not get 100 votes compared to the 99 in the room? So in effect, he could outvote everyone in the room if motions are made at the annual meeting?
Of course. Yeah.
Hey, that's correct too. So I just want to make sure, because I'm not an expert like you guys, but over the years I've done this enough. It's just amazing when I move into different communities, how people do not know how to run an annual meeting, and when you try to speak up, they shut you down, they shout you down, they say, "Oh, we ran this by our attorney." Well, okay, run it by him again. But
well, my favorite answer is, well, this is how we've always done it.
Right.
Which is like, I was like, okay, you've always done it wrong, but
exactly.
But
that's really not illegal. That's not a legal reason, but you hear it all the time. Well, this is how we always do it. So,
and I've heard the argument that because we've always done it wrong, we set a precedent. And I'm like, no, I don't think so.
You can't set at least in that context, that precedent doesn't mean anything. I mean, precedent means something in other contexts, not in that context.
Now, one more question. If I I have a wife, and she's not on the deed, but I don't want to run for the board, so I delegate her to run for the board. Would you? I know you didn't see our docs. Assuming there's nothing in our docs that allow delegation, is that permissible?
If your documents say to be on the board, you must be an owner. Okay.
It does.
That's number one, because that's not necessarily, you don't have to. I mean, all owners have a right to be on the board, but unless the documents require board members to be owners, that's not something that's in the law. So assuming the documents required board members to be owners, you can't delegate someone the ability to be on the board. You can't use a power of attorney. You can't use a proxy. They literally have to be an owner.
Okay. Now, if there is a huge mess, I mean, we didn't have a quorum to have an annual meeting, no election, but they're just pushing through because they're saying we did have a quorum when we didn't have a quorum. There is no, again, state agency like the condo division has for HOAs. So there's no one to appeal this to state-wise. Am I wrong?
Well, no. Well, they do have jurisdiction to deal with election disputes for HOAs. So
the department does?
Yes.
Okay. So would that go to arbitration through them?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You're going to end up before the division with an election dispute. They have jurisdiction over a few things, and that's one of them.
And they will cross over to whether it's a HOA or a POA.
Yep.
Okay, good. Now, the only other avenue would be to do your own arbitration, because it is in our docs. It's not a requirement, but it says that we can go through arbitration. It doesn't mention the department, but I'm assuming it's two parties agree to go to an arbitrator, but then you got to figure who gets to pick the arbitrator. Have you ever run into that?
I mean, if your documents have a procedure that you have to go through first before you actually file some formal action, then you do have to use that process first.
Yeah, it doesn't actually say you have to. It just gives you the option.
Okay.
So in your case, John, you're better.
But any
off
election,
going
but I'm sorry,
to
last thing I'm saying, but any challenge to an election must be done within 60 days of the day of the election. Otherwise, it's too late.
Yes. And all election material must be kept at least 1 year.
Well, that's for the records, yes. But the actual challenge itself must be done within 60 days.
Okay. So, have you seen in most docs where if you go to arbitration, both sides just pay their cost?
Well, usually it's prevailing party gets.
Oh, it is? Okay. Because ours was changed to that. It used to read that everybody, pays their own cost. That way, no one runs up the bill, I guess. Everyone wants to keep it down. But now, I guess prevailing party means, I really feel right, so therefore, I'm going to get back my attorney's fees and go for it.
Well,
I always thought the first system was better if you just say, hey, everybody just pays their own fare, half, 50-50, let's go Dutch. And I don't know, am I wrong, Peter? Do you think it gets run up the way it is with prevailing party, or just the opposite?
I don't know. I kind of like the prevailing party because I think that's an incentive to do the right thing. If you know that if you screw it up, you're going to have to pay your fees plus the other side's fees. I mean, this argument, I guess, can go both ways. I kind of like the prevailing party. I think that gives incentive to not bring frivolous claims, and it gives incentive to, try to do the right thing the first time. So, why bring a claim that you may not have much support to it if you're going to have to pay the other side's fees and vice versa. So I kind of like the prevailing party.
Well, and the other thing on that, Peter, is that if it's a homeowner bringing an action, against the board, in effect, the homeowner's getting the rest of the homeowners to pay half of their pay half of the costs associated with it. So it kind of can encourage somebody to file against the board if they're just going to split the cost. But
Mark, but it also levels the playing field.
Right.
If you're paying yours by yourself and the other side is getting 100 people to pay theirs, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It works on both. What I'm saying is it works on both sides. The prevailing party works on both sides because the association then doesn't have to, if they are in the right, they don't have to pass costs along to the other homeowners that they shouldn't have had to pay. And then the other side of that is that if you're the homeowner, you prevail, you're not going to have to pay all your legal fees by yourself. In effect, you're getting the rest of the homeowners to help you pay your legal fees.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So again, as I said, in the end, I like the prevailing party. I think obviously there's pros and cons, but I think the pros of prevailing party outweigh the cons.
the big thing is that I like the arbitration, not the mediation as much, because it's generally not binding, in any manner. So, but binding arbitration as an alternative to going to court on stuff, or at least as a prequel to that, is really, I think, a good deal, because too many times, whether it's in taxes or it's in condo associations, you get somebody who is an attorney, so they can file even if they don't know what they're doing, and next thing you know, you've got a lot of you're incurring a lot of cost for the association, constantly dealing with things, going to court, even if they end up getting it thrown out. It's just a lot of time and effort and money that has to be spent. So it's I think that the binding arbitration is a good thing. I started putting in my leases after an attorney who does litigation work told me, yeah, you should put this in here, because it's going to save everybody a lot of money. But
And the lot owner does pay both attorneys indirectly, because he is paying his assessments.
right,
And,
right,
you know,
right.
you're paying for the attorney you're going up against. So it's kind of maddening in the end. And if it's just one person, it is kind of discouraging to that person, because he doesn't want to run up a big legal cost and then be stuck with the other legal costs.
Yeah.
So when you do have a group, though, a neighborhood that has not, for instance, been assessed equally, and if the docs say all the neighborhoods shall be assessed equally when it comes to common assessments, not maintenance assessments, but common assessments, and that is not applied equally, it's just, to me, it's like, it's maddening that those people in that particular neighborhood have to go up against the rest of the association when the board is simply violating the documents. And you would think there's some document police, but there aren't. So you have to take legal action through arbitration.
Right.
Have you seen a lot of your communities, Mark, go through this arbitration process recently?
No, for a long time, first of all, a lot of associations don't have language in there requiring any of that. So if they are going, it'd be a condo going to arbitration. And I know that on a lot of that stuff, for a while, the division was all backed up. It was taking a while to get stuff through. I don't know, Peter. I haven't seen much lately. I don't know what the deal is. I guess COVID's kind of stopped a lot of stuff, but
is the homeowners association? I mean, the homeowners association management company, do they share any responsibility if they totally mess up an election and allow people to fill out proxies and attend the meeting and a list of other things that were totally inappropriate? I mean, it seems maddening that you have to go through this process when it's so cut and dry.
Well,
I mean, not in the sense of, I guess an association could go after their management company, or, contractually maybe, although so many management company contracts now exclude or disclaim everything under the sun, including their own screw ups. No offense, Mark. But long story short, at the end of the day, they're the agent. The association is still going to have to deal with whatever mistakes were made. Maybe you have some private recourse against the management company under your contract. Who knows? But good luck proving damages there. I don't know. I guess you could say your attorney's fees, but I really haven't seen any of those kind of claims, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and on that kind of stuff, John, frankly, if I'm doing something like that, I'm doing it with an attorney. I mean, I'm generally not going out there and trying to, and not try, if it's going to be a contested thing, or if there's some issues, I'm going to run that by the attorney. May not be there, but I'm going to make sure the association has an attorney who's advising them on their election. And if something comes up, I'll have somebody available that I can contact and ask them a question. But
well, unfortunately, our attorney works for the president. The president is the only person that can speak to the attorney. The president is trying to ramrod the election through, even though we didn't have a quorum. So it's kind of like the members against the board and against the attorney and against the management company. Now, one thing about the management company is I like the owner. They're a very good person. They even admitted that the people they sent probably should have done a better job, and they should have had their management attorney present for the election, which she can't figure out why he wasn't there, but he was very apologetic. But the thing is, if I needed to make it a complaint about a management company, does the department handle those complaints because of licensing?
They do. I mean, the division falls under the Department of. The regulation of management companies falls under the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, so it's under the same. It's basically under the same umbrella at the state level. But the condo people aren't going to. They can refer it to as a complaint under the property management guidelines, for property managers, but they're not going to actually bring the action. They're going to refer it, but as Peter said, management companies really, people don't understand it, but management companies really have no authority. We have to do what the board tells us to do. We're not attorneys, so we can't override their attorney if we think their attorney's doing it wrong. And frankly, and Peter knows this, many times, not many times, but from time to time, especially when you got developer control, the attorneys involved aren't really condo attorneys or HOA attorneys. They don't really know all the ins and outs of some of this stuff. And so, and
You're saying the attorney for the management company?
Yeah. Well, most management, well, that's a whole different story. It's now,
Well, you're not going to see a management company attorney at an annual meeting.
No.
Well, this is what she told me. I mean, I'm just
here's the problem you got, John. They changed the law. Now, I don't know if they changed it back, but they basically changed the law so that as a property management company, I can't use an attorney that my clients are using. And
yes, that's true.
And that made it very difficult because most of the property management companies, their relationships are with attorneys for their clients. They have all that. And so that put a real crimp in things for property management companies because we don't have, it's hard for us to get, qualified legal counsel at that point because now you got to pick an attorney who doesn't do this kind of work,
Yeah.
And
the office manager for the property management company conducted the election, the counting that is, and conducted whether we reached a quorum. And I told her we didn't reach a quorum, but then she went out and nominated the president of the association to be the chair of the meeting once she thought we reached, and she's not a member, so she can't at an annual. Once you establish a quorum, you can't have a third party who's not an owner member of the association nominate anybody. Now, she could not. Now, the funny thing about that is the president of the association could have nominated the manager of our association management company. That's fine because you don't have to be an owner to be the chair of the annual meeting. But it can't go the other way around. I mean, a non-member, non-owner can't nominate anyone from the floor. So it was just one fiasco after another. And if I didn't have so much experience at these mess ups in the past, I probably would have lost my temper. But I had to laugh. It was just comical.
Hey, Peter, I got a question for you though, going all the way back to John's original question. We determined that if that person owned 100 lots and they were bringing, they're coming and they're voting, they would be voting their 100 lots, right?
Right.
But there really isn't anything that would prohibit them from giving a proxy, right?
They could.
Yeah. And presumably
they could sit there and give the proxy to you, and you would then have the right to vote for them. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I asked that is because I have seen from time to time where you've got developer issues and because sometimes internally, there are potential, the person that's got to be signing off on some of this stuff is got to be an owner, and the person that's doing this work may not be an officer of the company. You know what I mean? And it's one of those kind of things where they want to make sure that all of their units are voted correctly and that are, that the proper person has authorized the vote, even if it's through a proxy. But
Well, Mark,
what?
the person that attended the meeting was the person on the proxy. He signed,
Yeah,
for
but
himself.
what I'm getting
proxy.
at is technically that doesn't make a difference. You could give a proxy to yourself. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's kind of ludicrous, but you could give a proxy to yourself. And in a situation where you have a corporate ownership of these things by potentially different corporations or corporations that have different officers, sometimes the proxy may be given to a person that they know, can handle the proxy, but the actual proxies are signed off on the people that they know are authorized to sign off on that proxy. See what I'm getting at? And then
But
at that point,
he signed his own proxies and he never provided a voting certificate for the LLC. And in our documents, it requires all corporations and any other business entities. That covers the LLC. So they never provided a voting certificate. So his proxies were mute from the get-go.
Well, you'd have to see who was authorized to sign his proxies, and whether that was done, because there is kind of a, it, like I said, corporate world sometimes gets really strange. But you'd say, well, if the person's going to be there, but sometimes, the owner of the lots wants to make sure that internally their paperwork was signed off correctly, and that they've provided whatever they need. So they're going to make sure that whoever's issuing the proxy to this other individual, even if that other individual owned the lot, technically, then they're going to make sure that person was authorized to issue that proxy. And then at that point, all you have to, you don't have to worry as much about so this guy comes in with 100 votes. If he signs, let's say he signs on 10 of them, his name or whatever, but maybe those 10 are owned by an entity that he's not the manager of, and therefore he legally can't sign off on that vote. So there is nobody present at that point. But if he has a proxy that is legally signed off by the person that's allowed to represent that or to sign on that, the manager of an LLC, the officer of a corporation, then now his vote becomes legitimate because it's a proxy vote and the proxy was signed off correctly. See what I'm getting at? So that's why.
Also real quick, because I heard John mention voting certificates. The cases do read, and I don't know what the situation with this association is, but if the association historically has not enforced the voting certificates, the state's not going to either. Okay, so if there's a history of not requiring owners to submit the voting certificates, they're not going to discount an election because they weren't used in this particular election, or they weren't, looked at.
Yeah, but even if we count his proxies, we still didn't reach a quorum anyway, there were other people in attendance that also signed the roster and also next to it turned in a proxy. So the whole point is this person who represents this LLC never provided any written authorization that he was the legal representative of the LLC, nor did he provide any minutes, nor is he listed on Sunbiz under this LLC. Nowhere is his name anywhere. And Sunbiz is very lax as far as providing information as far as LLCs go. I mean, I find it comical sometimes. Mark, you're very good at what you do, and I'm sure your LLCs cover all the bases, but not everyone does. And it's very limited. And of course, you speak to somebody on the phone and you say, well, why doesn't Sunbiz do this? Well, I don't know. I just answer the phone. So you really can't get to the person to get an answer as to why can't I find out who the officer is listed on Sunbiz when it's not clearly apparent.
Well, it is. On Sunbiz, whoever is the manager is whoever is the manager is the officer. There can be designated officers, but those are not official, so those aren't listed with Sunbiz. And if they if it's a member managed LLC, then all of the owners have to be listed. All of the members have to be listed. Um, under uh, under Florida law, there's no such thing anymore as a member managed. So you don't have just the members that can vote. Technically, right now, if you go to Sunbiz, legally, what's supposed to be there is um, either the manager in a manager managed, the manager or managers in a manager managed, or all of the members if it's member managed. And the state does not enforce that. They don't look at your documents and determine whether that's right or not. That's up to whoever fills out the annual report. But
well, the annual report doesn't mention a manager for one.
well,
And
it has to. The articles of organization have to list the manager.
It does have to indicate who is the managing member.
Yeah.
Peter?
So anyway, but that'll help you out if you go there and look for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what Peter said. What did he say about that?
No, I said the same thing that Mark said. I mean, the Sunbiz should list who is the manager or who is the managing member of the LLC.
I understand, but this is a large builder, national builder, and they set up LLCs when they purchase lots to build.
Right.
And trust me, if I could see the word manager listed on Sunbiz, I wouldn't be arguing this, but there is no one listed as the manager. There is no operation agreement.
Wait
I
now.
can't find anything.
In an LLC, the manager can be another LLC or a corporation or another another entity. It does not have to be an individual like it does with a corporation.
Okay, so how do we determine who is that one individual from this large national company has the right to file proxies?
If they've done it right, it's going to take you a long time.
I know.
Because here's the thing. The manager can be an LLC. So now you got to go find that LLC. And then you got to determine from that LLC who its manager is. Well, that LLC may be a Delaware LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And that entity or Nevada. And that entity could be so if you want to keep it private, you can have a Nevada LLC that's licensed to do business in Nevada and has an office in Nevada, and by law in Nevada, you're not required to disclose who the manager even is. It can be a proxy manager is what it boils down to. So bottom line is that's why people use LLCs. They're not quite as good as land trusts in terms of keeping the ownership private, but they are certainly you can make it very difficult, particularly these large corporations that are that have management companies that are chartered in, like you say, Nevada or Delaware or Alaska or wherever. And so and that's the purpose of it, so that people aren't suing people and they're not suing officers and all that kind of stuff. But that's how it works. And if an entity is chartered in one of those other states like Delaware or Nevada, there is an obligation that they at least register. They have to be registered in Florida to do business as a foreign entity. So they still have to register in Florida. You still should find them.
Yes, but the LLC for this particular development is listed in Florida, but you're saying that the national company could be listed in Delaware or Nevada.
Right.
It's just for the average person to try to look this up, for the average association to try to determine who is the person. We're just going by on this person's word. And of course, there's this, I forget the legal phrase, but if the company doesn't complain about the employee for running for the board or for casting votes or proxies, then there's an assumption that this person has the authority to do so. Well, large companies can miss things too. And 6-8 months later, the association gets sued because this person's on the board and had no authority.
Well, yeah, but again, the associations are usually protected by some of that because they, if they've acted in good faith, the actions that's taken by the board are still going to be valid. But yeah, it's actually it's very difficult. But you got to understand that's why we always talk about the fact that you really need to revise, or at least consider revising your documents once turnover's taken place, because there is a whole different motive from a developer and how they want to run an association from the homeowners. And those
I said
documents are
development.
going to.
I didn't mean to imply that the developer's still on. We've already changed our
No,
documents.
no, I'm just saying this in general. As people sometimes say, why should we spend that money? Well, the reason is that it's important to know that there's different focus there, and from time to time, stuff can come up, and you're going to once you have control of the association, you're going to want that action to be treated differently than it was when the developer was in control of the association. Is all. So,
well, thanks again, gentlemen. I'm sorry it took so long this time. I thought I could get in and out in a half an hour, but you guys are great and patient, and happy 20.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Edna, are you still there? Edna, are you still there?
Yep.
All right. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. We have a real estate person who is managing 5 units. She says that she has a power of attorney for all of these owners. Is she allowed to attend board meetings, and can she vote in the election?
Most likely, yes. I mean, you'd have to see the power of attorney, but
yeah, I mean, there are some wiggles in it, Edna. I mean, some issues. For example, if it's a trust that owns the property, and that person is not the trustee, then you can't designate that trustee position through a power of attorney. So that might be a situation where her power of attorney isn't valid. If it's owned by a LLC, like we were talking about before, if it's owned by an LLC, you cannot delegate the manager. The manager can't be under a power of attorney. That has to be done by whoever's elected as the manager. So it can't be a power of attorney. So there are restrictions on, and frankly,
but they could still give her a proxy anyway. So if they want to just get around this,
yeah. But yeah, they could. And so, but there are some limitations sometimes on the authority of a power of attorney. The other thing is that Florida changed its power of attorneys. It's been a while ago now. I don't remember exactly how long, but the Florida power of attorney now is not. Used to be able to just give a general power of attorney, and it kind of covered everything. But now in Florida, the power of attorney has to specify what powers that person has and doesn't have. So if they're using an old power of attorney, or if they're using which is sometimes the case, or if they're using a power of attorney that has doesn't cover those powers, then there may be limits on what they can do with that power of attorney. But normally, that's the purpose of having power of attorney, is so that somebody who maybe is not capable of coming down and managing the property, or being involved, maybe they've got some health issues or whatever, you're giving the power of attorney to this person to take care of those things for them, so that they can do whatever the owner could do, get maintenance done, rent the unit out, do whatever. So
yeah, that's the main thing, is they're taking care of the rentals.
Yeah. And, it's kind of a, but, Peter, you can jump in here, but you can't do something under a power of attorney that you're not legally allowed to do individually. So, the owner can't abdicate their total responsibility on an issue, and say this power of attorney is going to handle it, when maybe the individual didn't have the authority to do it. If it's a trust that requires multiple trustees, or if it's a like I said, an LLC or something like that, if the individual didn't have that authority, then you certainly can't give the authority with the power of attorney. That just doesn't mean they can do anything that person could do.
Okay, as a unit owner, then do I have a right to see the power of attorney?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, I guess,
That's
if
think you would.
if they're taking action, it's the question is whether or not you have the ability, which you may not, whether you have the ability to see their trust if it's a trust document. So there's some things like, for example, you may have the ability to see the power of attorney to see that they were authorized to, to issue a proxy, for example. But then there would be a question as how much access you have to their operating agreement if they're an LLC, their trust document if they're a trust. Um, there may be some restrictions there. I don't know, Peter. What's your thought on that?
Well, the proxy, the power of attorney itself, assuming the association has it, is part of their official records.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with you. If the association doesn't have the trust, or if there is a trust or whatever, probably not accessible. Um, uh, you know, I don't know even whether the association even has it or not, but the
Well,
power of
my
attorney
my rental
itself.
is in an LLC, and they don't have a copy of that. They just show,
Who the officer
it
is?
just
Yeah.
says that I'm the manager.
Right. Yeah, and that's all they have. And they can document that on Sunbiz, so they don't need your operating agreement. But technically, they could require documentation to show that you were duly appointed as the manager. So
Okay.
that's typically a written consent or minutes. They wouldn't have to see the operating agreement, but they would have to see something signed by the entity authorizing that. So there is, some things they could get there. Um, as far as some of this other stuff with, just as a side note, for those of you out there that have trusts but maybe have active investments in real estate or other things, a lot of times the attorneys that prepare the trust agreement will prepare a trust certificate, or a trust summary, really is what it is, but it's a trust certificate that you can give that tells what the requirements are, that who's authorized to do what or whatever. And then you don't have to give them a, 200 page or a 50 page trust agreement that may have some very private information in it. So, that's another thing just to look at. If you have a trust, you may, if to avoid having to give people all of that private information, and have it then be subject to public scrutiny, potentially, these trust certificates work pretty well as an alternative.
Okay. Next week, could you talk about whatever you have picked up in Tallahassee that might?
I think I picked up COVID, but other than that, I can talk.
Oh,
about
geez.
No, I don't think I got that from them. But yeah, we can talk. I can talk a little bit about it. It's actually in general. It was. I can summarize it pretty quickly. Nobody really knows what legislation's coming out. There were the legislation was being formed, as Peter knows. He's got people involved in that, and there's major groups up there of law firms and of other interested parties that are, actively putting together legislation, including now this year engineers and reserve specialists and everybody else that's involved in all of this now, trying to control what's coming out of here. But but in general, the thought is that that this will not be as mandatory as some people originally thought it was going to be. It appears that some of this will be left to local municipalities, and some of it will be, and overall, some of it will be dictated by the state, which could include mandatory reserve studies. But nothing is Nothing is really finalized at this point. It's really out there, just getting ready to go into committees and all of that. So, but it's being discussed. The other thing I would say is, although it changed between the secretary of the Department of Business and Professional Regulation actually changed between my meeting in December and now. I think about a week afterwards. But the woman who was the secretary, she's in another role now. I forget where she's at. And then the individual who's now in charge of the division are very, very much into getting out there and getting education out there and getting information out there and trying to communicate with the stakeholders. So we'll see what happens. We can talk a little bit more about that next week and follow up. And Peter, maybe you can get some information for as to what you're hearing going on, because they'll be well into session by then, I guess. So
Okay.
Anyway, well, thanks for joining us here on Condo Solutions. Sorry we missed you over the holiday, but hopefully you'll be with us every Monday morning from 9 to 10 o'clock right here on WSTU Digital 1450. We are Martin County's Heritage Station.